It is 8:13 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It's the 29th day of April 2025. This is episode, looks like 1084 of Bitcoin. And there's an op return kerfuffle, and people are accusing Bitcoin Core of being co-opted for about, the 300th time. Apparently, now they're evil again. And there's a real problem again, and Bitcoin's gonna die again. No, it's not. So why are you here at the Bitcoin and podcast? I'm gonna throw you all the news that you need to know for the day so that you're not freaking out about what people are yelling about on Twitter, Nostr, Reddit. This whole core thing is starting to blow up again. And we're gonna talk about it. But not before we talk about OFAC reinstating Tornado Cash sanctions. It's not going to happen, and I'll tell you why. Samourai wallet, we may have some good news on the horizon, as well as good news coming out of Arizona. And then BlackRock, back in the news. And, the Lightning Network seems to be doing much better than people actually think. Remember all the times the arguments were, Lightning Network doesn't work? Apparently that's not true. It just doesn't seem to be true. Alex Mashinsky, the scammer, is going to get his, and quite a lot of it too. Cambridge University study has come out. Bitcoin mining is now sustainable. The question becomes, will Elon Musk actually do what he said he was going to do and reinstate Bitcoin, taken in payments for Teslas? Given what I'm seeing at Tesla right now, it may not matter. And I think that there's a wider issue going on with Tesla. I don't think it's as much about Tesla itself or the fact that Musk went over to Doge and he pissed a whole bunch of people off. I think that people are getting their fill of just how crappy electric vehicles really are. And I'm actually not even talking about the power. I mean, the electric motors on a electric vehicle, they'll rip you to shreds, man. I mean, they've got a lot of torque. In fact, they've got a lot more torque than an actual gasoline engine hooked up to a transmission. But there's other problems with these vehicles. Like, God forbid you get one submerged in a flood. The whole thing is actually rather terrifying. And so I'm just saying that I don't think Tesla, their sales are in the shitter just because Musk went over to Doge. I really do think it's a much bigger problem. And then we're going to talk about Secretary of Commerce for the United States, Howard Lutnick, and his, quote, Bitcoin vision for America. But first, court bars OFAC from reinstating Tornado Cash sanctions. Vince D'Aquino from Decrypt.co. A federal court has now permanently barred the United States Treasury from reimposing sanctions on the crypto mixer Tornado Cash, delivering a definitive victory for crypto privacy advocates. Judge Robert Pittman of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas updated and finalized amendments on Monday, ruling that the Treasury's actions were unlawful and placing an order that compels the Treasury to be permanently enjoined from enforcing it. The ruling explicitly rejected the government's attempt to avoid a final judgment after it voluntarily lifted sanctions on Tornado Cash in March. Quote, after the Fifth Circuit ruled against the government in November, it repeatedly tried to avoid entry of a final judgment, Coinbase Chief Legal Officer Paul Grewal tweeted, sharing a copy of the amended rulings. Quote, today, the court said no to this nonsense, end quote. With the ruling, the Office of Foreign Assets Control would now be legally prohibited from reinstating the original sanctions, Grewal noted. Treasury officials had claimed that the case was moot following their discretionary delisting for Tornado Cash, but Judge Pittman applied a precedent, finding that Treasury officials could potentially seek to reenact precisely the exact same designation on Tornado Cash in the future, end quote. This accounts for the second part of the court's mootness exception test, which allowed the case to reach a final judgment. A mootness exception test helps courts decide if they should rule on cases even after issues look like they've been resolved. The decision comes 3 weeks after the Department of Justice announced that it would no longer pursue criminal charges against crypto mixing services unless they're involved in criminal activities. The case stems from OFAC's August 2022 decision to sanction Tornado Cash, placing it on its specially designated nationals and blocked persons list. OFAC challenged that Tornado Cash facilitated over $7 billion in money laundering, including funds linked to, of course, the children killers over there in North Korea. God, just the most ridiculous thing. This action marked the first time U.S. authorities had sanctioned open source software protocols rather than individuals or organizations. Now, in November of 2024, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, right? The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that OFAC had exceeded its authority under the International Emergency Economics Powers Act. And at the time, the court determined that immutable smart contracts are not property because they are not capable of being owned, adding that over 1,000 participants engaged in a trusted setup ceremony which prevented any updates or controls over Tornado Cash's core code base. The Fifth Circuit, their ruling, established a precedent for how blockchain protocols are treated under United States law, potentially reshaping how regulators approach decentralized finance services. So the lowdown is that Tornado Cash that case has now been effectively dismissed with prejudice. They cannot be charged under that same distinction again. So when are the Tornado Cash developers going to go free? That's the question that everybody at this point is asking. Tornado Cash's future seems secure. And of course, they're going to find something. They're just going to find something at one point or another, because the legal system in the United States and pretty much all countries really is just about as gameable as it comes. But that's really just an aside. All right, just prepare yourself mentally for that shit. But as far as we're concerned right now, everything that these guys had been arrested for, it's no longer a point. It's no longer an issue. So when do these gentlemen go free? That's the real question. Okay, so let's move on to Samourai Wallet. Because the feds are asking for time to mull over the possibility of dropping that crypto mixer case. Samourai Wallet is not part of the Tornado Cash issue. This is a completely different issue. However, there is mixing involved, and Martin Young from Cointelegraph hopefully is going to tell us some very, very good news as U.S. federal prosecutors and the co-founders of the crypto mixer Samourai Wallet have asked a court for more time to consider potentially dismissing the case after the Justice Department rolled back its crypto enforcement. Lawyers for Samourai Wallet CEO Keon Rodriguez and Chief Technology Officer William Hill said in an April 28th letter to a Manhattan federal judge named Richard Berman that they have jointly requested with the government for a continuance of the pretrial motion scheduled by 16 days. The Samourai executive's lawyer said on April 10th that they wrote to acting Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton to request the dismissal of the case after an April 7th memo from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche shuttered the Justice Department's crypto team. Quote, on April 24th, 2025, defense counsel met with prosecutors and their supervisors in person at the U.S. Attorney's Office to discuss this request, the lawyer said. Quote, the defendants believe that a continuance of the pretrial motion schedule is warranted to permit defendants to avoid the significant expense of preparing their motions while the government determines its position, the letter stated. It added that prosecutors agreed to adjourn without expressing any views on the merits. Samourai, Wallace, Rodriguez, and Hill were charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering and operating an unlicensed money transmitting business back in April of 2024, to which they both pled not guilty. Blanche's memo said, quote, the Department of Justice is not a digital assets regulator, and it would abandon enforcement and investigations besides those which focus on prosecuting individuals who victimize digital asset investors or those who use digital assets in furtherance of criminal offense. Currently, motions in the Samourai executives case are due May the 13th. Responses are due June the 10th and replies on June the 24th. The letter proposes to put this back to May 29th for motions, June 26th for responses, and July the 10th for replies. The continuance would not affect the trial date, which is slated for early November. The move is the latest in a long list of court actions to have prosecutors' crypto cases quashed under the Trump administration's favorable stance towards the industry. On April 9th, SafeMoon CEO Braden John Caroni, who is charged with wire fraud and money laundering, cited Blanche's directive in a bid to get his own case dismissed. Meanwhile, on April the 28th, the DeFi Education Fund petitioned the White House to drop charges against Tornado Cash co-founders Roman Storm and founder Roman Storm, and requested immediate action to discontinue the Biden-era Department of Justice's lawless campaign to criminalize open source software development. So maybe even the Samourai guys get out of this mess. And it is a freaking mess. But you know who else is in a mess? Canada. Let's hear it.
You demanded action, and now it's time for the financial sector to deliver. To reach net zero, every country, every company, every bank, every investor, every pension fund around the world will need to make some big changes. In the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow, we have an enormous opportunity to bring climate change into the heart of every financial decision.
Into the heart of every financial decision? Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely out of your ever-loving mind? Canada has elected Mark Carney as their prime minister, and many Canadians seem very, very happy about this. And yet the first, I mean like literally out of the gate, this gentleman is simply talking nothing about anything other than climate nonsense. And now, in the heart of every financial transaction that you make as a Canadian moving forward is going to be the climate issue. What could possibly go wrong?
And our plan will manage the risks from climate change while helping to seize the opportunities from a newer, greener economy. The UK has been at the forefront of innovation for centuries, brimming with ingenuity and a can-do spirit. It also houses the world's largest financial system, and by bringing them together, we can deliver the net zero world that you've demanded and that our future generations deserve. The world's coming to Glasgow. Let's reshape finance for a sustainable world.
I don't even know what to say about this. Pierre was he was the opposition, and he had a huge lead, a massive, massive lead in that election, and it just eroded away. And I think what his big mistake was that he took Trump seriously in this 51st state bullshit. Because it is bullshit. Trump has no intention of annexing frickin' Canada. That is a ridiculous statement. If you knew anything at all about how Trump has played in the last, 5 decades of his life, you would know that he's not serious about shit like that. He's just saying crap. He's just blurting stuff out. It's to get a rise. It's to get attention. He is a master marketer. and he has always been a master marketer. And yet, Pierre he was livid. I saw one of his speeches about how he was going to combat Trump, and there was no way that Trump was going to get a hold of Canada. And Trump never wants Canada. Most of the United States doesn't want Canada. Canada should be for Canadians. But right now, you guys are getting freaking hosed, and it's going to get worse. Every bill you pay, every meal you purchase, every Coca-Cola you would like to go refresh yourself with is going to be scrutinized as to whether or not it generated freaking carbon. You are the carbon that they want to eliminate, so be aware. You elected this guy, and you're going to reap the rewards of that decision. For my Canadian listeners out there, you've got to understand this. And I honestly didn't trust Pierre either. Watching him get so livid over Trump was like, oh, this is not the reaction that a head of state should actually have, because he clearly has no idea what Trump actually means. Both of them would probably be bad for Canada. Although this Mark Carney guy, the considering that his clear focus out of the gate for his prime ministership is going to be climate change, and that is going to be the hill that he dies on, because they are not giving up. The climate hystericists are just not going to give up. It's going to mean potential financial ruin. I wish this hadn't happened to you guys. Really sorry. Hopefully, we can always hope that it won't be as bad as we think it's going to be. But if I was running odds, I'd say complete and utter destruction of the Canadian way of life within the next 5 years. But hey, hopefully I'm wrong. I really want to be wrong. Please, for the love of God, let me be very, 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 very wrong about that. Now, on to Arizona, where we have good news, I guess. The Arizona legislature has passed both Bitcoin reserve bills, moving closer to stockpiling crypto. It's waiting for the governor's desk, both of them. It's out of every committee. It's passed every floor vote. It's passed the Senate. It's passed their state House of Representatives. It's done. The only thing left, ladies and gentlemen, is Arizona governor's signature. Will the governor sign? I don't know. But this is out of Cointelegraph. Turner writing, lawmakers in Arizona at their House of Representatives have passed 2 bills that could allow the state to adopt Bitcoin in a third reading on April the 28th of Senate Bill 1025, and also known as SB 1025, a proposal to amend Arizona statutes to allow for a strategic BTC reserve. 31 members of the Arizona House voted in favor of the bill, with 25 opposed. A similar bill, SB 1373, to establish a state-level digital assets reserve, passed with 37 lawmakers in favor of and 19 voting against. Quote, this bill basically takes the approach that probably 15 other states are considering, the same legislation nationwide that allows the treasurer to invest up to 10% into, probably mainly Bitcoin, but other things as well, said State Rep Jeff Wenninger on SB 1025. Quote, I think this probably would start as a may for the foreseeable future, but as things continue to pivot towards Bitcoin, and these things would have that already in place in the future. Okay, so what does that mean? It means they're probably not going to buy immediately if the governor signs it into law and that thing becomes law, because there's going to be a little wait period after the governor signs the thing. There's going to be a little bit of waiting. This guy is suggesting that they may not actually still buy Bitcoin. They just want this in place so that they have the infrastructure available legally, the legal framework available for them to be able to start pulling triggers if and when they decide to actually pull triggers. So don't expect Arizona, even if the governor signs this, to immediately start stockpiling Bitcoin, okay? And that's probably going to, there will be all the pundits against Bitcoin saying, see, they even passed the bill and they still don't even want any Bitcoin, so be prepared for that one. But Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs announced on April 17th that she intends to veto any bill until lawmakers had a serious bipartisan funding solution that protects health care for Arizonans with disabilities. However, with the passage of such legislation on April the 24th, the governor could be more open to signing SB 1025 or SB 1373 into law. The state-level efforts to create Bitcoin reserves comes amid a push from U.S. President Donald Trump. Yes, we know, and then they do go back into this strategic Bitcoin reserve and the whole Trump signing of the executive order that has essentially amounted to what? Squat. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Hell, we were supposed to get an audit like 30 days ago or something like that, or there was a 30-day pause or a 30-day wait time for them to actually audit how much Bitcoin and any other digital assets that the United States had in reserves or held, and we still have yet to see the numbers. It looks like the audit has never been done. Telling you, man. I'm telling you, if it's a politician, it doesn't matter what they say, they're lying about it to somebody. I still have yet to see a shred of decency when it comes to upholding what Trump said he was going to do. Except, I will say this, at least he released Ross. Thank God. He did do that, so kudos to Trump. But as far as the strategic Bitcoin reserve, seen nothing. As far as the audit about what stuff we have, seen nothing. I'm seeing nothing. I'm seeing nothing, nothing. And I'm not shocked. Why? Because politicians. That's all I have to say. Are you a politician? Yes. Then you're lying. Numbers don't lie, though. BlackRock's IBIT has seen the second largest Bitcoin inflow since launch, nearing $1 billion. James Van Straten is writing this one for CoinDesk. The BlackRock iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF, or IBIT, saw $970.9 million in inflows, marking its second largest net inflow since launching in January of 2024, according to Farside data. Monday accounted for $591.2 million in new capital, which saw heavy outflows from competitors like Fidelity's FBTC lost $86 million, Bitwise dropped $21 million, and ARK dropped $226 million in outflows. Holy moly. The rise comes along a 7.2 rise in BTC over the past 7 days, with it now trading at roughly around 94,900. And since April 22, IBIT has amassed over $4.5 billion in net inflows, bucking the market trend. Industry experts have taken note. Nate Garachi, president of the ETF store, remarked, quote, "Nearly $1 billion into iShares Bitcoin ETF today, second largest inflow since January's inception. I still remember when there was, quote unquote, no demand." Eric Balchunas, senior Bloomberg ETF analyst, added, quote, "ETFs are in 2 steps forward mode after taking 1 step back, exactly the pattern we predicted," end quote. Meanwhile, in derivatives markets, open interest on CME Bitcoin futures continues to fall, now sitting at 132,750 BTC after 4 consecutive days of decline, according to CME data. The recent decline in open interest could be coming to an end as the annualized basis yield has climbed from around 5 to 9% in April, according to Velo data. This resurgence in basis trade profitability could prompt renewed activity and short-term rebound in open interest. You spelled degeneracy wrong. I'm just saying. Why it matters? Well, in a typical basis trade, investors buy spot Bitcoin and then short Bitcoin futures to lock in the price gap. When the yield is high, demand for futures rises, boosting OI. And as the yield shrinks, fewer traders engage in the strategy, leading to declining open interest, or OI, and signaling reduced leverage in the market. It's just degeneracy. It's just gambling and trying to head. It's like having a system at the roulette wheel. One thing, there is no system at the roulette wheel. You think you've got a system, but you don't have a system, and you're going to get blown out. And after all the dust settles of you getting blown out and all the blood, spray that you experience and all the people that got destroyed, and after everything is said and done, you're going to need to clean yourself up. So I highly recommend SoapMiner's handmade 100% beef tallow soaps. The Circle P is open for business. The Circle P is where I bring plebs with goods and services just like you to plebs who want to buy goods and services just like you. And if you're dirty and nasty and stinky and smelly, you're probably going to want some soap. You can get Fresh Breeze tallow in a 5-ounce bar for $7. There's lemongrass tallow bars. There's orange clove tallow bars. There's rough cut tallow. What's that? It means it ain't got no nothing. It's got 3 ingredients. It's got distilled water, it's got lye, and it's got 100% beef tallow. It's just soap. But if you want something like a little bit more, pretty smelling, there's pine tar, there's cedarwood, there's peppermint, there's lavender. All you got to do for a 10% off your entire purchase is use coupon code Bitcoin and you can do that over at SoapMiner.com. That is SoapMiner.com. Again, it's SoapMiner.com. And he's one of my favorite vendors. I love this guy. I love his soap. He sent me a box of it. I'm still working through like my first bar of rough cut tallow soap. I've tried a little bit of the lavender because my wife and my daughter really, really like it. And I love it too. It's got like some purple colored clay in it. So it gets it's got a little bit more rough on it. Feels great. I love that. But I have yet to try the peppermint. I have yet to try the cedarwood, and I have yet to try the pine tar. And I'm really looking forward to that pine tar. I know it sounds weird, but honestly, a good pine tar soap will get you clean. SoapMiner.com. Use Bitcoin and coupon code today for 10% off your entire purchase. And speaking of percentage points, 15% of Coinbase's Bitcoin transactions now run on the Lightning Network, according to Atlas 21. That's atlas21.com on April the 28th. Coinbase revealed that 15% of its Bitcoin transaction volume is processed through the Lightning Network. Damn. In a statement shared with the block, the exchange highlighted the acceleration in the adoption of Bitcoin's Layer 2 protocol. The Lightning Network integration on Coinbase took place back in April of 2024. Michael Rahani, director of product at Coinbase, commented, quote, "Integrating the Lightning Network was a key milestone in supporting the Bitcoin ecosystem and making payments faster, cheaper, and more useful for everyone. Within 1 year, 15% of our Bitcoin transactions utilizing Lightning demonstrates its real-world utility. We're quickly proving that Bitcoin is a powerful tool for global payments with Lightspark," Rahani said. Holy smokes. And this is from a company, Coinbase. I'm not a fan of Coinbase. They don't seem to like Bitcoin. I'm highly surprised that they have this amount of good words to say about not only Bitcoin itself, but also the Lightning Network. He continues, talking about Lightspark, a company focused on global payment infrastructure built on the Lightning Network. It develops SDKs and other tools to help developers connect to the Lightning Network and accelerate its adoption, and that's what Coinbase is using, of course. The Lightning Network makes Bitcoin transactions faster and cheaper for everyday use. In addition to improving transactions through Lightning Network, the exchange also announced the launch of the Coinbase Bitcoin Yield Fund, which is targeting degenerates, telling them that they're going to get between 4 and 8%. Don't buy this. Okay? Yes, I think it's fabulous that 15% of Bitcoin transactions on Coinbase are running through Lightning. That is awesome. And then they start talking about 4 to 8% yield. As normal, ladies and gentlemen, the question is what? Where does the yield come from? Let's run the numbers. West Texas Intermediate oil getting nailed, pummeled, just absolutely burnt to the ground, 2 points to the downside, all the way back to $60.79 a barrel. Brent North Sea likewise down over 2 full points to 64.43. Natural gas moving the other direction, up a half point to $3.36 per thousand, and gasoline is down almost 2 full points back to just over $2 a gallon. Gold is down 0.83% to $33.20 and a dime. Silver is up a third. Platinum is down over 1 point. Copper is moving sideways. And palladium is down 1.66%. All of your agricultural futures have been destroyed. Everything's in the red, ladies and gentlemen. Everything. And the biggest loser today is looking to be coffee, down well over 2 full points. And everything, like literally, there's nothing on to the upside. I guess the least amount of loss is in chocolate, minus 0.13% to the downside. Excuse me. Live cattle, however, is up a third of a point. Lean hogs are down 0.87%. Feeder cattle are up almost a full point. The Dow is up almost a half point. And the S&P is up a tenth of a point. NASDAQ moving sideways, S&P Mini also moving sideways. We got $94,990 per Bitcoin. That brings us to a $1.89 trillion market cap, and we can purchase 28.7 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our 1 Bitcoin, of which there are 19,857,544.62 of, and average fees per block are low again. 0.04 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. It looks like there's about 10 blocks carrying 14,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 4. Count them 4 Satoshis per VByte. Low priority is going to get you in at 3. We've got a little bit of elevation on our hash rate today. We're back up to 846.7 exahashes per second. So do with that what you will. Gold member lives. Yesterday's episode of Bitcoin and Maple Trade. Oh, never mind. That is a he's getting me back for selling his maple syrup. By the way, remember, this is the last week that Maple Trade will be able to sell any of his maple syrup. He's almost completely out. That's how fast his maple syrup goes. And there's a reason for it. It's delicious. He's a member of the Circle P. That means he takes Bitcoin for his goods. Because if you don't take Bitcoin for goods and services, you're not in the Circle P. Maple Trade, congratulations on damn near selling out everything. I hope that I had a hand in that. Digital Panhandler, 1000 Sat says nothing. Yodel with 501 says great ways. Except he does it in elite speak. Permanerd, 256 says NunyaBidness taps into common sense almost as well as Maple Trade taps into trees. This podcast gets a bit sour, but Maple Trade syrup is always sweet and going fast. Yes, it is, Permanerd. It certainly is. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news you can use. What's all this kerfuffle with Bitcoin Core, the core developers? You know, the Bitcoin Core software, the software that makes all this possible. Is Bitcoin Core being co-opted again? Are we going to die again? Probably not. But if you're wondering what the hell's going on, there's a guy called Mechanic, I think is also known as Grass-Fed Bitcoin on Twitter, apparently got shut out of the GitHub repository because he was, voicing concerns about this op return debate that is going back and forth between the guys over at Core. So that's a problem. Okay, I'm not defending Core for that. That's bullshit. Just because somebody has a dissenting opinion does not mean that you should be like not allowing them to speak. That's really a bad look, for the Core developers. I think that is a terrible decision. I think they should rescind that decision, but I don't think Bitcoin Core is going to die. I don't think the software is going to be co-opted. So what was he dissenting? What was Grass-Fed Bitcoin dissenting about that he got shut out of the repository? Well, it seems to be that it's on this discussion of op return. It looks like there's a discussion to remove the arbitrary limits on op return outputs. So, little background here. Op return allows the embedding of data into Bitcoin transactions. Sound familiar? It should. Because its op return has been used. I think op return was what was originally used when people were making rare Pepes, before NFTs, before rocks on the blockchain, before ordinals and inscriptions, before all of it. Yes, we had dumb shit in Bitcoin transactions, and they were called rare Pepes. And it happened years ago. Rare Pepes were running around when I first got into Bitcoin in 2015. All right, so this is nothing new. But if you lift the limits of how much data you can stuff into an op return, all of a sudden, yes, we do have a potential problem here. So it's historically been limited to a mere 80 bytes in Bitcoin Core. So the proposal is to remove the arbitrary op return size and output count limits, remove related config options, preserve, let's see, I'm reading these notes here, preserve form, single op return plus data pushes only. All right, so again, this is all about saying, okay, we've got an op return, we can put data into that op return. That op return, if you put more than 80 bytes of data into that op return, no go. You can't do it. And it's 80 bytes is nothing. It's like, it's just so little information. But it's good enough to do all kinds of neat shit with, but they want to remove that. They want to be able to stuff more data into the op return, and in my opinion, this is not good. I do not want to have to run a 50 terabyte node or hard drive to be able to run my Bitcoin node. I think it's important for us to run our own Bitcoin nodes because that means we have our own mempools. We're supporting the Bitcoin network around the world. And this is an old argument. If we allow this is essentially, this is going back to the block size wars, where we didn't want huge blocks because it would make running a node economically infeasible for people like me. It would put it into the hands of people that are just doing business, that are making enough money that they can afford to run their own node so that they could verify their own transactions and make sure everything was above board and kosher. But everybody needs to be able to do that. So yes, I completely 100% disagree with removing arbitrary limits on the op return outputs, especially at this time. But I'm not part of Bitcoin Core, so we may have to deal with it. There are some arguments in favor and against, and here they are. Arguments in favor of removing arbitrary limits on op return outputs. Limits are ineffective against actual data publishing. Current limits incentivize UTXO set pollution. This thing would simplify the code and reduce maintenance burden. It aligns with Bitcoin Core's policies, or aligns Bitcoin Core's policies closer to consensus rules and avoids incentivizing private or censored relay systems. The arguments against. There's a risk of Bitcoin becoming a general purpose data storage situation. Loss of node operator control over mempool policy. Security and privacy risks, forced storage of arbitrary content. Well, we actually already have that with ordinals and inscriptions. God only knows what kind of garbage is on my node and lying in wait in my mempool to be transacted against. That particular argument against, let's move on. Larger contiguous data blocks. It says 100 kilobyte increase risk versus inscriptions of 500 bytes. Okay, that means that if inscriptions really are only 500 bytes of data, that's pretty tiny. 100 kilobyte increase, that's huge. That really messes shit up. Okay, so there's also a potential need for retroactive disk obfuscation for older nodes. Now, I'm not really technically competent enough to comment on that one, but I don't like this. I don't like this. There's a heavy split, apparently, between the yays and the nays in Bitcoin Core on whether or not they're actually going to implement this. I hope they don't. I really do. I hope they don't. But does it mean that Bitcoin's dead or going to die? No, it's not. I will bet every single day and twice on Sunday on the ingenuity of the human mind, being able to route around things like this in case it does happen. We don't know what this enacting of this particular situation would cause other humans to come up with. But I'll bet you my ass that somebody somewhere would be able to figure out a way around it, because I'm always going to bet on human ingenuity. So that's the lowdown on what the hell's going on with op return, Bitcoin Core, and we're all going to die argument. Now, on to the U.S. Department of Justice requesting a 20-year sentence for Celsius founder Alex Mashinsky. Personally, I think they should just throw him off of a cliff into a deep ocean. But Helen Part's going to tell us more, Cointelegraph. Alex Mashinsky, the founder and former CEO of the now defunct cryptocurrency lending platform Celsius, faces a 20-year prison sentence as the DOJ seeks a severe penalty for his role in a multi-billion-dollar fraud. On April the 28th, the DOJ filed the government sentencing memorandum against Mashinsky, recommending the 20-year prison sentence for his actions, which led to billions of dollars in losses for Celsius customers. The 97-page memo mentioned that Celsius users were unable to access approximately $4.7 billion in crypto assets after the platform halted withdrawals on June the 12th, 2022. Quote, "The court should sentence Alexander Mashinsky to 20 years imprisonment as just punishment for his years-long campaign of lies and self-dealing that left in its wake billions in losses and thousands of victimized customers," the Department of Justice stated. All I can say is we were warning people way back in the day against shit like Celsius, BlockFi, all that. And nobody listened. Nobody listened. They just aped in and said, "Hey, man, it's crypto lending. This is the new way." Yeah, well, no, it wasn't. You just got hammered and hosed. But Bitcoin blocks still get mined. It doesn't really matter, does it? Cambridge University, speaking of, their study says that Bitcoin mining is with sustainable energy has hit 52.4%, exceeding Elon Musk's target to resume Tesla BTC payments. This is written by James Hunt for theblock.co. A new Cambridge University study found that the Bitcoin mining industry's sustainable energy sources have grown to 52.4% over the past few years, up from previous estimates of 37.6% in 2022. The Cambridge Digital Mining Industry Report, issued on Monday by the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance at Cambridge Judge Business School, said that 9.8% of sustainable energy use is from nuclear power. Interesting. And 42.6% is from renewables such as wind and hydropower. The report also found that natural gas has replaced coal as the single largest energy source used in Bitcoin mining. Natural gas use has increased to 38.2% from 25% in 2022, while coal has fallen to 8.9% from 36.6% over the same period. The findings come from a survey by the CCAF of almost 50 mining firms, including 41% publicly listed with operations across 23 countries, including Bitfarms, CleanSpark, Hut 8, Iron, Mara, and Riot, covering about 48% of global Bitcoin mining activity by hash rate. The study estimates the network's annual electricity consumption at 138 terawatt hours, or roughly half of 1% of global usage. Oh God, they're going to kill us on this. And its emissions at 39.8 megatons of CO2 equivalents, despite a 24% year-over-year improvement in hardware efficiency. Miners also reported that 86.9% of decommissioned hardware is resold, repurposed, or recycled, with the study estimating Bitcoin mining generated about 2.3 kilotons of electronic waste in 2024. Among other data, the study underscored North America's dominant role in Bitcoin mining, with the U.S., good God almighty, accounting for 75% of reported activity and Canada following at 7.1%, though there is also emerging activity in South America and the Middle East, alongside ongoing operations in Northern Europe. It also estimated that electricity makes up over 80% of miners' operating expenses, with median reported cost at $45 per megawatt hour for power and $55.50 per megawatt hour, including all expenses. Furthermore, the report also highlighted evidence of Bitcoin miners serving as flexible loads that can help grid operations in times of high demand, curtailing 888 gigawatt hours of electrical load in 2023 alone. However, as the industry faces increasing challenges, many mining firms are diversifying into areas like high-performance computing and artificial intelligence, or adopting innovative energy strategies such as flared gas utilization and waste heat recovery to improve efficiency and find new revenue streams. The CCAF report follows a recent Harvard-led study on Bitcoin mining's environmental impact, slammed by energy experts as deeply flawed. That study, published in Nature Communications, argues that Bitcoin mining in the U.S. significantly contributes to harmful air pollution, with 1.9 million Americans exposed to increased levels of fine particulate matter between mid-2022 and mid-2023. The researchers tracked 34 of the largest U.S. Bitcoin mines, claiming they consumed 32.3 terawatt hours of electricity, 33% more than the city of Los Angeles, 85% of which was from fossil fuels. Well, in response, Daniel Batten, an expert in energy and environmental sustainability, particularly in the context of Bitcoin mining, told the block the study is, quote, deeply flawed, suggesting that it, quote, looks like the conclusion was Bitcoin mining must look bad, then went looking to find the data and methodologies that supported that. Yeah, well, we call that cherry picking. Quote, this article is a throwback to an early generation of academic work on Bitcoin that uses flawed methodologies and cherry-picked data, an approach that was debunked by Tsai and Vranken in 2023, Batten said, quote, it should not be taken seriously by policymakers and regulators, end quote. The Digital Assets Research Institute also published a formal rebuttal of the Harvard-led paper, finding similar issues to Batten. Batten argues there is not just an issue with this Harvard-led paper referencing 5 other negative academic studies on Bitcoin mining since 2022. often receiving formal rebuttals over similar issues such as the use of non-contemporary data sets, discredited sources, citing news reports over academic articles, and selection bias. Holy shit. That's embarrassing for Harvard, y'all. Just I'm telling you, just like reading that last paragraph, coming from my background, and I have a very heavy academic background, especially in the sciences and the whole publishing side of it. That paragraph is damning, and it's embarrassing for Harvard. An institution like Harvard shouldn't be engaging in this bullshit. That should be more akin to Bob's backyard biochemistry college. I could see that, but Harvard, nah, this is ridiculous. And we talked about that study, that Harvard-led study, on this show just a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling you then just how bad it was. I'm glad that Daniel Batten agrees with me. Anyway, quote, despite Bitcoin mining's impressive growth, the rapid transformation has outpaced transparent, empirical data collection, often leaving policymakers, researchers, and the public reliant on outdated assumptions and anecdotal information, the CCAF report author stated on Monday. Quote, this CCAF report directly addresses a persistent data gap by relying on direct practitioner insights rather than abstractions. Alexander Neumiller, research lead, digital assets, energy, and climate impact at the CCAF, added, quote, by offering a granular perspective based on data covering nearly half the global mining activity, we aim to anchor the debate on robust, transparent evidence and inform grounded policy discussions about this rapidly evolving industry. However, the authors stress the new study is only a starting point, with more research needed on issues like methane mitigation, heat reuse, and broader social impacts such as job creation. Ongoing data collection will be essential to support informed policymaking that balances innovation with environmental responsibility, the CCAF said. So here's the question. Will Tesla allow Bitcoin for payments again? God, Jesus, who cares? But, it's part of the article. After Tesla CEO Elon Musk appeared to embrace Bitcoin in 2021, stating that, quote, in retrospect, it was inevitable. The electric vehicle manufacturer made further headlines by disclosing it had purchased $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin as part of its treasury management policy. Tesla currently still holds a measly, piddly, weak-ass 11,509 BTC, worth around $1.1 billion, according to Bitcoin Treasury's data, with an average cost basis of $33,539 a coin and an unrealized gain of 183.4%. I'm pausing right there. What is Michael Saylor's cost basis on average on a per coin? It's about $63,000 per coin, right? And of course that's going to float. It could be as high as 67. But Tesla's average cost basis is half of that. And they sold almost all of it because Elon is not as smart as you think Elon is. Sure, he's a great manager. And I think where Elon's real abilities lie is not in direct engineering, is not in coding, it's not even in management itself, as much as the ability to hire people who can do all that shit. That is a superpower. Being able to select not only a person with the abilities to execute a certain thing, but a person that isn't flaky, that doesn't like, just shit the bed, right? That. And I'm going to go one further. He can't hire all those people himself. So his real superpower is being able to see people that can do what he does, recognize talent and non-flaky people. So he hires people to hire people to hire people that are the best people to work for those companies. That's where his real talent is. Everything else, Oh, he's a brilliant programmer. Probably not. But he probably knows how to hire people who know how to hire brilliant programmers. He is an incredible engineer. I've worked alongside him. Dude, incredible engineers exist freaking everywhere. He's not all that brilliant. Besides, he didn't even build Tesla. He bought it. See? See where the talent is? I mean, if you want to compare him to anything, he's more like Warren Buffett in being able to suss out value in companies and people more than he is actually able to build the shit himself. And I'm not saying anything bad about that. I'm just saying let's give the devil his due, but let's make sure that due is actually truthful. Right? He's probably not as good of a coder or an engineer as people think he is. Now, continuing on, Musk declared a month later that Tesla would then accept Bitcoin as a payment method for its electric vehicles in the U.S. store, later rolling it out globally. Quote, Tesla is using only internal and open source software and operates Bitcoin nodes directly. Bitcoin paid to Tesla will be retained as Bitcoin and not converted to fiat currency. I need to pause again because what they're missing here is that Tesla chose BTC Pay Server to actually do this. And Tesla's own coders got into the BTC, the actual code, because it's open source. And they found bugs. And they suggested fixes. And they sent all that information immediately back to BTC Pay Server with best practices of bug reporting and fixing in mind. It was awesome. And then the bad news comes. However, just 2 months later, amid a Bitcoin price slump, Musk announced that Tesla would suspend vehicle purchases using Bitcoin due to concerns over the environmental impact of mining. Quote, we are concerned about the rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels for Bitcoin mining and transactions, especially coal, which has the worst emissions of any fuel, Musk said in a statement. The company said that it would hold on to its remaining Bitcoin holdings and would use it for transactions again as soon as mining transitioned to more sustainable energy sources. Quote, when there's confirmation of reasonable, more than 50% clean energy usage by miners with a positive future trend, Tesla will resume allowing Bitcoin transactions, Musk subsequently clarified. Though largely quiet on Bitcoin ever since, Musk said in a January, Twitter takeover podcast appearance, I do think there's some merit in Bitcoin and maybe some other cryptos. And I've sort of got a soft spot for Dogecoin because I like dogs and memes. End quote. Oh my God. Oh, nevertheless, Tesla is yet to announce any resumption of Bitcoin payment options, and it remains to be seen if they do. The block reached out to Tesla for comment. I guess they didn't hear anything. Here's the rub. Let's go back and revisit this quote. Quote, when there's confirmation of reasonable clean energy use by miners above 50%. Okay, we already have that. But here's the rub part. With a positive future trend. But there's no detailing what that actually looks like to Tesla. How many months? How many years of a positive future trend? Well, is there some kind of angle of the curve going up? That we need to be looking at. They said nothing, just positive future trend. And at this point, they can just say, nope, it's not positive future trend enough. Even though it's 54% sustainable energy usage for Bitcoin mining globally, according to the CCAF. And honestly, I don't give a shit. I just don't care if Tesla takes one more Bitcoin for a car. I don't like their cars. I think their cars are ugly. I think the Cybertruck is a worthless pile of metal. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, how much can it tow? For how long can it tow it? Up what grades would it be able to tow something? That none of those questions, nobody really ever talks about that. Can I haul 4 tons of equipment with a Cybertruck? Can I haul 1 ton of equipment with a Cybertruck? Will it go 100 miles? What if that 100 miles is mostly uphill? When I'm braking, because the brakes on a Tesla, I don't think they're brake pads. I think they're actually using potential energy in the electric motors to actually do that braking. How much can I brake? How much can I tow downhill without getting my ass killed? There's nothing about the Tesla vehicle that makes sense to me. Other than that, it seems to have duped a whole bunch of people, and now they're really mad at Musk, so they're getting rid of their cars because they bought it, quote unquote, before they knew who Musk was. Doesn't matter. Let's get out of that shit. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick has a Bitcoin vision for America. Howard Lutnick, take us out of today's episode of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Magazine's Frank Corva. Frankie is one of my favorite writers, by the way. He's writing this one on Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2025. I sat down with Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick to discuss his Bitcoin vision for America. We discussed the U.S. Department of Commerce's new investment accelerator that will benefit Bitcoin mining companies, why he views Bitcoin as a commodity like gold, and why it's only natural that the Bitcoin mining industry find a home in the United States. On March the 31st, 2025, the Commerce Department launched an investment accelerator. The aim of the accelerator is to help firms that want to invest in America get new projects off the ground. It assists by making clear to companies what regulations they must understand, and it helps them to obtain the necessary permits. Secretary Lutnick envisions the investment accelerator being beneficial to Bitcoin mining companies. Quote, "We're going to make it so that if you want to mine Bitcoin and you find the right place to do it, you can build your own power plant next to it," said Secretary Lutnick in the interview. Quote, "You don't necessarily need to be on the grid, and you are going to see this happen. Miners are going to put their data centers on top of gas fields and then put a plant right next to them so that they won't be beholden to drawing power from the existing grid." Interesting. You'll see the next generation of miners in America, they'll be able to control their destiny and control the cost of powers, which I think is going to turbocharge Bitcoin mining in America. Here's his views on Bitcoin as a commodity. Quote, "Bitcoin is a commodity, and it should be treated like a commodity. It should be treated like oil. It should be treated like gold. It's not a currency." End quote. Secretary Lutnick stated that in treating Bitcoin as a commodity, he might consider having the Bureau of Economic Affairs employ Bitcoin in its calculations the same way that it employs gold. Currently, the BEA uses gold to refine and calculate its national economic accounts, which includes GDP. The Bureau also accounts for gold and trade statistics, recording gold exports and imports as part of the international transaction accounts. Secretary Lutnick stressed that the Bitcoin industry is indeed welcome in the United States. He noted that the current administration has true Bitcoin believers in it, like himself and White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs, and he wants to see Bitcoin thrive in America. Quote, "America is the most extraordinary business place on earth," said Secretary Lutnick. He added that the goal is for the Bitcoin industry to figure out how to win in America because the Trump administration plans to help the industry achieve the highest degree of success here, an approach that is the polar opposite of the approaches of the previous administrations. Quote, "It was treated under the Biden administration like you were doing something wrong. Now you have that in the rearview mirror, and it's never coming back," end quote. And when he said, quote, "never," he didn't just mean never as far as the Trump administration is concerned. He meant that the United States is a Bitcoin country from here on out. Quote, "You've never seen the United States of America embrace something and then turn their back on it later. That's never happened," said Secretary Lutnick. If the Trump administration loses this next election, hell, even if they get lambasted in the midterm elections and this shit flips blue again and they do not have all this stuff as law, if it's standing as nothing but executive orders for Bitcoin mining, for energy usage, for how banks treat Bitcoin, for all of the stuff that we're getting coming out of DOJ and the SEC and the Secretary of Commerce and all the Trump himself, if it all remains executive orders and fucking statements, you can kiss it all goodbye in midterm elections, because the way that people are feeling right now, even a lot of people that voted for Trump are fucking pissed. It doesn't mean that I make no claims as to whether or not I hate Trump. I'm completely neutral, right? I don't care. He's orange. He does shit. He reaches for things. He screws shit up. Sometimes he does stuff right. I have to be neutral on this guy when I'm talking to y'all about it. He's not making the boomers happy. Whether you give a shit about boomers or not, whether you want them to be poor ass broke or not, it does not matter. They can vote. And they are pissed. They are visibly pissed. They were not expecting having the stock markets tank like they did. You and I both know it's a casino. I get it. They don't. You are not the people I'm trying to convince here. I'm just saying this is the way it is. And I'm not seeing a whole lot more motion of making the strategic Bitcoin reserve law, like Senator Lummis's Bitcoin bill. That needs to be law so that it is almost impossible to repeal off of the books. Because in midterms, even if the Republicans still take control and keep control of everything, you've only got 2 more years. And if shit doesn't start looking better for the boomers and the people that voted for Trump, there could be real problems. And here's the rub. If it does flip blue, either in the midterm elections or the 2028 presidential elections, if it flips blue, you can kiss all this goodbye. This will be immediately on the chopping block. It is very clear. Like when I get into my car, I listen to what? National Public Radio. And you're probably cringing and you'll go, why? Why on earth would you do that? Enemy chatter. So I can figure out what the hell they're doing. And you know what they're doing? They have selected climate change as the hill they are going to die upon. I'm largely not hearing as much about LGBTQ plus and all that stuff. I'm largely not hearing about trans issues. I'm largely not hearing about children being read books by drag queens. That's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing nothing but we're all going to die because of carbon, and climate change is driven by carbon, and carbon is bad, and we're all going to die. And yeah, that's all I hear. They're going to die on that hill. That Harvard study, that thing was manufactured to make Bitcoin mining look terrible. It's not. It's just not. Any time, I mean, that Harvard study had a map about all these, like county by county map of like, and they were all colored in black where fine particulate matter was charged up because of Bitcoin mining. And it was all just, it was like this chain of custody. It was like, because Bitcoin miners over here in this state use power from this grid in this other state, the power plants up here at this other state that are just happen to be part of this grid from this state started spinning up. So therefore, the mining in Texas caused a 4-year-old Tennessee girl to die. It is stupid. Everything about the Harvard report is just absolutely fabricated. And if you think it ends there, you're wrong. Because if this shit isn't locked into law by midterms and beyond, at least by the end of this administration, that Harvard study is going to look like a walk in the park. So just understand that we need stuff to start moving along here. Okay? I think we've given Trump enough of a break on not doing jack fucking shit with the Bitcoin strategic reserve that it's time to start putting pressure back on David Sachs and the guy from Bitcoin Magazine that kind of started. I mean, I can't remember his name right now, and I don't know why, but whoever that dude is, he's the one that got Trump to go over to the Bitcoin conference and say the words Bitcoin Strategic Reserve for the first time and helped get him elected. I mean, that's just a fact. He helped get him elected. It's time to start putting pressure on these people. Again, they need to get off their ass. This shit needs to end up in law. It has to have the legal framework wrapped around it. It has to be part of the legal infrastructure of United States code. Otherwise, it's all going away unless the Trump administration can get J.D. Vance or whoever, they'd have to retain power in midterms. They'd have to get reelected in 2028, whether it's J.D. Vance or whatever. Yeah, if you can do that, then you can kick this can down that road for another, 6 straight years or, 7 straight years? Let's just say 8. Okay, we'll just say 8. 8 years. Do you just want to kick the can down the road or not? They're not moving on the strategic Bitcoin reserve. They're not auditing. We still don't have an audit of the gold in Fort Knox like they were talking about. They keep saying they're going to do these things. They're not doing the thing. I know what you're saying. Well, David, what are you going to do about it? I don't know, man. Maybe I'll call my senator. A fat lot of good that's going to do. Maybe it's just, instead of calling your senator and telling them how they need to act, you call the senator and say, I'm going to primary your ass. Maybe that's the only thing out of every phone call and every letter and every email that it should just be a threat to primary your ass. Not begging, not pleading, just over and over and over and over and over again to where the guy or the gal in question goes to sleep at night saying, is it possible that they're serious, that they could actually primary my ass? Maybe then. Other than that, I don't know. But I do hope that you end up with a good Tuesday. Things are looking good. They really are. But we have to remain vigilant. That's what I want to leave you here with. Is that we can't just roll over and say everything is going to be fine. It's not going to be fine if we just roll over and think it's going to be fine. We actually have to do the thing. And I've done my thing, and I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.